is 7 o'clock. It is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to open the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. And I am calling it to order, and I will do roll call. I have members David May,
Here.
Mark Dipner, Brett Fergie,
Here.
Jen Maas, Greg Schwanke,
Here.
Nancy Carr,
Here.
Ryan Dominguez,
Here.
second on me. I'm Christina Maas here, and Attorney Mark Heinley is
Yes.
here. I need the appointment of a chairperson for this meeting, so an acting chairperson.
I'd like to nominate Greg Schwanke.
Thank you, Nancy. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Greg, it's your meeting.
Mark will help you.
Yeah, so the first thing on the agenda tonight is the consideration of the minutes from April 23rd and 28th. I haven't looked at these real quick before is this one hearing that was continued or? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll be a single motion to approve both. Let me just note first, before I turn this over, because we're dealing with not a ton of extra numbers, there is nothing prohibiting anyone here from voting to approve these, even if you were not at both sessions. You can abstain, but you're not required to. I only throw that out there because I don't know how many of you would have been there on May 23rd. It'd be great to get this approved. So anyway, okay. So Greg, you'll be looking for a motion first to approve the minutes of May 23rd and 28th, and then after a second, people can discuss if they want to, and then we can vote.
Okay, need a motion to approve the minutes from the last zoning board meetings.
I'll make that motion.
We have a second?
Second.
You said if we weren't here for one, what if we weren't here for both?
You can still vote.
You have the right as a commissioner to vote.
That's-
You don't have to exercise that right.
It just messed with me when you said if you weren't here for one.
Oh, right. No, I just, sometimes, and this might not be the case, but especially when there's been a year lag. If we've got only 4 people or 3 people that were at both and we can't get a majority on this, there's no big consequence, but the minutes will remain unapproved, so. That's why I threw that out. If there's no discussion, you can ask Sandy to call the vote, the roll call.
Ready?
So can I discuss what I brought up?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so in the zoning board meeting, when they were talking about the solar farm and they had the representative from environmental management at BFI Waste Systems, I asked a question about the nuclear waste that was buried in the first cell and where it was going to be compared to the solar farm replacement. And the gentleman said that he would get back to us on the information that he didn't actually say it was nuclear waste, but it had been reclassified. So I asked him if he could find out what it was reclassified to, and he kind of hee-hawed a little bit, and I said, well, there has to be a bill of lading for the trucking company to bring stuff in there. And he said he would get back to us with that information. I'm sure he hasn't got back to you.
Mm-mm. Would you like me to
so
follow
we need to
up?
follow up on that.
All right.
Well, that's the only thing I had in the minutes that I wanted to make note of.
Mhm.
Are you looking for an amendment to the motion to stick in a sentence on it looks like about halfway down page 2 of 3, maybe after the word hazardous, just a single sentence saying something to the effect of Mr. Hitzroth indicated that he would follow up with the village, or
Correct.
You don't have, okay.
Yeah.
Let me see, whoever made the motion originally, is that acceptable? Do you accept that
That
amendment?
is acceptable.
Okay.
Make the change.
And whoever seconded, that's,
Hi, David.
Second.
okay. So when the roll call is called in a minute, if there's no other discussion, you'll be voting on a version of the minutes with an added sentence capturing the fact that the speaker, Jim Hitzeroth, indicated that he would follow up with the village about the nature of buried materials. Or however it would be phrased, but.
Are you ready for a roll call?
Gonna ask Sandy to call the roll if there's
Yeah.
no discussion.
Roll call,
right.
please.
Jennifer? Jen? David? Greg?
Approved.
Brett?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes. Okay, so with that being approved, then the next item is, we're gonna open up a public hearing for the purpose of discussing, the two, a text amendment and a subdivision, plat. So you, call the public hearing to order. There's no one to swear in, so, there's a little fanfare than just calling it to order. I can give a recap.
So, okay, so we need to call to order the notice of public hearing.
Let me first state for the record that this was, the notice of these items was, timely published in the Ogle County Life on the 25th of March. So we do have jurisdiction to move forward. The item, relating to the subdivision, which we will address, I think, secondarily, additionally was the subject of bail notice to property owners within, whatever the code stipulated distance is, 250 feet, I think. If it was 500, that's what we did.
Yes, I did receive one back in the mail, but the address is the address of their tax bill, so we did our duty.
Yep. Yep, we don't have to make sure anybody reads it or opens it, you just have to make sure it gets there. So, both of these items, Mr. Chairman, may I, give an overview?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first item, both of the items tonight that we're gonna, consider are village initiated, measures, so it is not a surprise to me, there's no one in the room, no one else had asked for these. The, first item is, pretty straightforward, for the most part. We'll add an additional tweak at the end related to some crop cultivation stuff, but Sandy, the village clerk, identified in our zoning code as part of a routine review that there were several instances in which references to R1 were transposed with the R2 zoning district and vice versa. That was with the specific sections that we impacted are detailed in the notice and on the agenda. There is mistaken references in A3101, A3108, A11503E. And I guess that's it for that specific set of mistakes. So your R1 zoning district is your least intense residential. So these would be the biggest lot sizes in your proposed findings. In fact, tonight it's classified as a semi-rural district. So these would be really big lots. R2 is sort of your medium-sized residential lots. This would be, kind of a suburban style, whatever it is, quarter acre, third of an acre. Don't quote me on that, but it's sort of a medium-sized residential district. And then your R3 district, which actually isn't involved in tonight's in the erroneous portion, but just for clarification, R3 is your most intensive of the residential. This has would be like mobile homes, things that have been really restricted, smaller lot sizes. So the sole purpose of the text amendment is just to clean up the village code to correct those mistaken references and make sure when we say R1, we mean R1, when we say R2, we mean R2. We have prepared for you tentative resolution for your review containing just a general findings of fact saying that the proposed alterations are reasonable and not arbitrary. And again, the idea here is not to truly effectuate a substantive change, but to simply correct the record to have it read the way that it was intended to read. Sandy, you're the one that caught the mistake, so if that high level overview,
It does. I was just gonna point out something that I think will help them. So, the subdivisions, the original town district, those types of things are currently, R1 under our zoning. But as Mark was describing it, you notice that he described R1 listed in our current code as larger residential lots that are, have open space. That should be the R2. That was the.
oh, that's the mistake.
That's the
Ah,
mistake. So you actually said the mistake by describing
Okay,
it.
yeah.
So R2 is, should be the larger residential lot, and R1 is all of our subdivisions and our original town district and things like that. So we
It's
noticed.
confusing, if R3 is your most intense, it seems like it should go in
It
an
does.
ascending
Yeah, it
direction.
does
That's
not.
okay, well.
So it's, so anyway, that's the area that needs to be corrected, is our zoning code flip-flopped them in a few locations.
So this item, there is, first of all, before I continue on, are there any questions about what we have just said? That is what is captured in your PZC draft resolution 25R1. That is the only thing that we've written on.
So, as I understand it, then we're just correcting basically a typo.
Yes.
Say, that was made in the original documents that
Yes,
were.
remember back in
approved.
2018 when we went through that? Yeah, we missed it apparently in 4 spots.
Okay, cause we're not,
Yeah.
we're not changing.
We are not.
zonings or anything.
No, so right now, if you look at our zoning code, it describes it as marked listed, which is the reverse of what we have. So
Right.
yeah, we just need to fix it.
Okay.
Do you remember those days of reading 5,000 pieces of paper?
I'm trying to figure out what that said.
Yes.
Sandy, my thought here is, once that's discussed, that the PZC resolution that's been drafted be considered and potentially adopted exactly as written rather than amending on the fly. We can still consider that other piece, and if it's approved, I'll write it out after the fact.
I agree.
Perfect.
Especially since we already drafted the separate ordinance for it.
Right.
Yeah, move that.
If there is no further questions or discussion, we can close, what do we call these? Do we give these public hearings separate numbers?
they're all-
Okay, then we're not gonna close the public hearing, because we have another piece, but you can entertain, a motion to approve this PZC resolution 25R1, which sets out a very brief findings of fact saying that the board or this body recommends that the board amend the code in the way that we've discussed to make sure R1 means R1 and R2 means R2.
So I move to approve PZC resolution number 25R01.
I'll second that. Jim.
All in favor?
Well, we'll do a roll
Oh.
call vote, but first,
Okay.
if you may want to see if anyone has any questions or comment, and if not, then we'll call it, we'll have Sandy call the roll.
Any discussion, further discussion needed?
You ready?
Yes.
All right, Ryan,
Yes.
Jen,
Yep.
David,
Yes.
Greg. Greg,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Now, there is an item we're gonna call out for separate discussion before we talk about Gateway. This was part of the notice of public hearing, and so it is probably before us tonight. It is in fact also referenced on the agenda, which is good news. I will describe it and then we will have entertain a motion and to approve the change I'm about to discuss. And I would draft a recommendation to a resolution consistent with the direction of the board this evening. I'll fiddle with the language to make sure that when it comes time to make that vote, that I have phrased it more sensibly, and I just did. And that item is text amendment that would address your permitted use table to add in the R3 zoning district that residential crop cultivation, which would also either require a new definition or a revision of the existing definition, be designated as a permitted use in R3. And the reason for this is the state of Illinois passed the Illinois Garden Act, and it says, among other things, that everybody has to be allowed to have a vegetable garden, or herb garden, or a flower garden, in any residential or on their own property. It actually doesn't specify that as residential, but for our purposes, we'd be addressing the residential portion of the code. Specifically, it's 505 ILCS 87 /15. That section 15 of the Illinois Garden Act reads as follows. It's only 2 sentences long, so I'll just read it to you. Any person may cultivate vegetable gardens on their own property or on the private property of another with the permission of the owner in any county, municipality, or other political subdivision in this state. A later portion of the law says that this even overrides home rule, so everybody has to allow it. This isn't specifically currently a use that is listed on your use table, or at least it's not listed as being approved in the R3 district. You guys aren't throwing anyone in jail right now if they're growing some vegetables in the back of their R3 lot, but this would clean up your code to make it formally consistent with the state law. And since we're here anyway as a body, this is a good opportunity to recommend that change for the board to then adopt. Sandy, I miss anything? That was just kind of on the fly here, but I think that.
Nope. My summary was the state goals, we have to fix it, and here we are.
It does say that this doesn't mean that you cannot subject this type of thing to setback requirements and probably some maintenance requirements if it does, so you can regulate that people can't have 20 feet sunflowers or whatever. There's room for regulation, but for our purposes tonight, we're just going to designate residential crop cultivation as a permitted use in the R3 zoning district. So if there aren't any questions, or if there are questions, you could call for a motion to adopt a resolution consistent with this body's direction to recommend approval of modifying the definition of residential crop cultivation and designating it as a permitted use in the R3 zoning district. And you don't have to re-say that. You can just say, if someone wants to make that motion.
What is that?
Just make that motion, we'll have to second it, and I'll figure it out on the back end.
Yeah, that motion's not
Is
in
there
there.
any further discussion on this from anybody?
It's currently allowable in R1, 2, and 4. Somehow, we didn't allow it in 3. I don't remember what our thought process was at the time, but the state has said it doesn't matter what our thought process is, we have to allow it.
Well. Let's get ready for our breeze. Be growing some stuff.
We'll cut into the subdivision. Oh, and.
There's our.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
the
the mobile
trailer
home
park, yeah.
community that's affected. Yeah.
If they haven't already. So do we need a motion? for
Yes.
that? I'd like to make that motion as we stated.
I will second the motion that was stated.
You want
If
to roll
there's
call?
no
Roll
discussion,
call,
you
please.
guys.
Mark,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
I don't know how John's and Matt's do it. Every time I hear you say, I'm never in a room with another Mark, I'm like, it's very destabilizing. I always want to vote when you're calling.
I know, so we had that at the last meeting that you both were at too.
See, I had the exact opposite problem. You said Jennifer and I didn't skip a beat. I'm like, oh, that's.
Because I never call you.
No.
I realized that's why you weren't answering that.
All right, well,
Too many of them.
all right, well, the third item tonight in some ways is the most interesting, but probably requires maybe the least level of thought. This is usually a kind of a technical engineering exercise, but the third item for consideration tonight is, there's a couple of sub pieces in it. It is, you're considering the recommending approval to the village board, of several different things. Both the preliminary plat of the Gateway subdivision and the final plat in one fell swoop. And in order to do that, you will also, as sort of a subheading, be authorized, recommending a modification to the subdivision code allowing for the simultaneous consideration of the preliminary plat and the final plat of the Gateway subdivision. Here's what that means. When a developer that, most typically these subdivisions come in, they're not village driven, usually it's a private developer, somebody's coming in and chopping up their land. And before they get a yes from whatever municipality they're going before, they don't want to typically spend the money on the technical engineering specs and have it engineered to the hilt because that's pretty expensive. They want to get their preliminary plat, which is sort of the concept, and more detailed than just a broad concept, but they want to get their first level of approval. And then once that's in hand, they go and spend the money on the technical engineering, get everything refined, and they come back. Usually it's within a year, and they get the final plat approved. And that is typically, in fact, even legally, kind of a rubber stamp process. As long as they have done what they said they were going to do with the preliminary plat, you're actually required to approve it. So because the village in this case is the applicant and the entity that reviews third-party submission from an engineering perspective and a technical perspective is your village engineer, who in fact designed this, we thought it made more sense to consolidate. And this is pretty typical, and a lot of communities will do this. So this is nothing. It's not above board here, but just for the sake of efficiency, since you guys are the applicant and the reviewer and your own engineer has spec'd it out and is the entity that would make a recommendation to you guys for approving a third party plat of subdivision, it simply made sense. We are subject to your agreement. We believe as a village that it makes sense to consider this all at once and just get it done so we can move forward. Yeah, if you guys concur with that sense, or after you discuss it, you concur with that sense. Again, all we'd be doing tonight is just everything at once. We'd recommend that the village board accept the preliminary plat of the Gateway subdivision and then the final plat. And what that is up here. So the road, this is Route 72, so your major commercial thoroughfare. This is all village owned land. It's currently 2 parcels, is that right? I only said 2, okay. There's currently 2 or 3 parcels. It's
Actually, I can see the line on there, it's 3.
okay. This would subdivide down, it's gonna do 2 things in the main, maybe 3. It's gonna take the 2 or 3 lots that are there and change them to convert into 8, obviously regularly shaped, ready for development lots of approximately 2 acres each. There's a slight variance, but essentially they're all 2 acres. It also, you're gonna have a couple of new access points to 72. These are roads and they don't currently exist. There'd be Forest Avenue going north-south here, kind of on the right. There would be an east-west, a new right-of-way Davis Drive. So you'd have 4 of the commercial lots south of Davis Drive and 4 sandwiched between Davis Drive and Route 72. And then to the west, you'd have Lexington.
Oh, so close. Closer.
Lexington Lane that goes north-south and again offers a secondary access point to 72. IDOT is never super fast in their reviews, but they are privy to these plans, and I think tentatively have blessed or endorsed the concept of getting these curb cuts and road access ways onto 72. There would also be a stormwater detention area, and the associated utilities and everything else that your engineers have devised in support of this. Sandy is better positioned than me to address exactly where it is at. I understand that one of the lots is currently under development by the village pursuant to a grant. The rest would be offered for sale in the future for private development. And again, I think the sense is this is zone C3 already, so there's no zoning change here. C3 is your most intensive commercial, so it is reflecting the fact that this is sort of prime real estate right off 72 that makes sense for commercial development. And this would offer opportunities once it was developed for increased employment and hopefully boost your sales tax and, maybe a better lived experience with, maybe there'd be some, restaurants or retail or, any of the permitted uses that would be in C3. But again, tonight you're not reviewing a specific development proposal. You're just authorizing imaginary lines going through that map so it can eventually be offered for sale as 8 separate lots. I don't know if that's a fair summary, but I think that's where we're at.
Are the streets themselves set in stone as well?
Yes.
And how wide are they?
60.
66 feet for Davis Drive is specifically referenced as 66 feet. Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry, they're all
Yeah, they're all-
66 feet,
that's
and
the standard.
that is what, that's a normal
Yeah.
roadway.
So the roads themselves are typically built at 33 feet, but the right of way for the road is 66 feet. So I like to use our subdivision as a good example because you can tell with the ditches there. So the right of way goes actually to the tops of the ditches, even though the roadway is the 33 feet.
Okay.
Right, yes, that's, but it's well said. The street that you drive on is a little distinct and narrower than the ultimate right.
But the right of way will be the standard as it is almost everywhere else in town.
Okay, and is the, like the hydrants going to run through that roadway or jump down 72?
There should be hydrants located within.
The what, you think they're located within?
Yeah, I think there's several hydrants spec'd on that job.
Yeah, I believe that would be accurate.
I couldn't tell, this is really little.
It is really
You're right.
Even with my glasses on.
I couldn't send you the big one though.
Where exactly is this at?
So it's set, let me see, on the,
I'm gonna give you the latest description, so it's. Who asked the question, Ryan, do you have that,
Me.
Greg did, so it's, the corner is JC's, next to it's the state yard, then there's the Hall grain bins, then this lot. It's all of this, farm to the south there on 72.
The wheat field,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, it's almost all of it, 5 acres on the far end of that belongs to another person, so almost all of that is this development.
That's where I thought it was going, yeah.
By far end, you're referencing the east end?
The west end.
West end.
The west end
Okay.
is 5 acres owned by another individual, so
Okay.
which is why you'll see that,
Gotcha.
Davis Drive here is actually gonna kind of dead end that way. With an opening, it'll have a curb cut there so that they can still access their land.
Okay.
Oh, I know. Oh, that came out, that was supposed to stay in.
You're on a roll tonight.
I am. Yes, Sarah Fire hydrants.
Alright. You
I'm
can zoom
zooming.
in faster than I can.
And you said the breaking up of the development is not set in stone. so
It
that
is.
Could be 6.
No, it's 8 parcels, so that's what you guys are doing tonight, is you're approving this subdivision.
right, I'm sorry, and I think I know, I understand the thrust of your question. I think I probably, in an attempt to be helpful, probably muddled it. What you would be approving, it would be, well, if you recommend approval and the village board approves it. This would be, this will get sent off to the assessor, they'll provide pins for each of these 8 things, and this will be the development, the roadway and the utilities are probably gonna be built first. The rest will, be offered for sale and whenever it's purchased or somebody has an idea for one of them, it'll be up to the village whether you want to sell to person A or company B or whatever. So when I said it's not set in stone, I just meant the end use is unknown. You are just creating a condition where there is an opportunity for 8 distinct uses or users to be determined in the future, but these would be the 8 lots created.
And then as far as the roadway, those are the names?
Yes.
Of the roads?
Yes.
Because my concern is Lexinger is going to be a little difficult for the county to get.
Well,
across
the thing that will
us.
never have a single address on it. The way that is, there won't be any addresses for that, like, it is simply just an entrance road. Kind of off topic, but name was given because, the village received a $3 million grant with the assistance of that individual to build this. And so the village felt that it was appropriate at that time to dedicate that road, which will never have an address on it, and nobody will ever need to pronounce it, except for as an entrance road.
And the fire department.
And the fire department. Do you guys know
Oh,
it?
yeah. And the county.
Serial need to pronounce it, but the county won't pronounce it, because they'll just give you the address of the
Yeah,
emergency, they won't give you the.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, there's never gonna be an address on there, it was dedicated that way, and then Forest Avenue comes from the undeveloped original planned Forest Avenue that was supposed to be on the west side, or the east side of the tracks for the original plat of Davis Junction that was never developed, and then Davis Drive is obviously for Jeremiah Davis.
Also, though, to answer your question on being set in stone, nothing is ever set in stone. A subdivision can be re-subdivided in the future. So if the market is uninterested in 2-acre parcels, it turns out there's no takers or whatever, the village could come back to the same process and re-subdivide, or an end user could. You could combine a couple of parcels, you could split them out, but at least the thought was that this was probably the most commercially palatable, most likely to sell. And I certainly wasn't part of those discussions, but I have no reason to not believe that to be the case. But if it proved not to be the case, it's simply a matter of coming back and doing the exact same thing we're doing now with a different looking map, but the same territory. So it's not permanent in that sense.
No, and we are kind of cart and horse here, and we're running them both at the same time, not necessarily one in front of the other. Because the lot 1 is already scheduled to be developed, and so that will already have development on it, it's already gone out for bid and it's been awarded. So we're kind of doing this in line, thank you, IDOT. So we're kind of doing things at the same time with this, but there will be confirmed development on lot 1.
And you said it was zone C1?
C3,
C3.
which is called, it's on here, the Corridor Commercial District.
It's the same thing that everything down that entire corridor is zoned.
So it'd be light industrial?
No, I don't have the use table in front of me, but it's a retail designation. I don't want to misguess, as I think Sandy's pointed up right now, but it would typically be things like restaurants and retail stores. Maybe Walgreens, things like that, but given the location, it'll probably be attractive to vehicular, driven stuff. It's not gonna be like an old West Main Street where people are walking in off 72, I wouldn't think, so.
Or jumping the railroad track?
It says districts with greater intensity, more regional and imperial. Oh, here it is. The C3 corridor commercial district is intended to serve the entire village and surrounding area with a wide variety of retail uses, including provide a major retail center available to persons living in the area surrounding the village. The regulations are designed to encourage a broad range of fashionable retail and compatible services uses appropriate for such a center. So, Stenstrom's, the other one.
High fashion.
Huh?
High fashion
Yeah.
stuff, Paris fashion. Week
Yeah.
type
Sure.
stuff.
Tiffany's,
Any other questions?
Wait, 2 acres, about 80,000 square feet roughly, is that about right? So if this helps, typically a bit like a big box grocery store or a big box store, maybe not the biggest of the big box stores, but a typical grocery store, I think generally 70,000, 75,000 square feet, so roughly. If something like that located, you probably wouldn't have a ton of parking on site, because I would pretty much fill out a box, but maybe somebody would buy a couple. But just to, if 2 acres doesn't mean anything to in your heads, that might help you
We're out here in
envision.
farm country.
Right, so
No.
If there's
Any
no
further
dis-
discussion? No?
So you lot one grade, so you built on?
The village has to develop it as part of the grant agreement.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, we're doing it ourselves.
As in you're building something, but there's nothing in there yet?
We know, yes, we are building a strip mall building, we have not leased it to anybody yet.
Now, what happens if there's no interest in the other 7 lots?
That is a undesirable outcome.
I only ask because you got the rest on,
The other ones that are.
Well,
east.
so here's what we have found, and, when we can control the lot, we can negotiate better. And so it's hard to negotiate for somebody else. So Dollar General is a great example. We discounted the lot in exchange for them developing within X amount of time frame to get the tax dollars rolling. And so we have that ability to negotiate when we're the landowner that we don't have when we are not the landowner.
So you have seen interest down the road on 72 and
Yes.
251, it's
Yes.
it just hasn't been able to sell because of outside factors. essentially.
Yes.
Gotcha, okay,
Yes, even renting of the units down there has been somewhat difficult because, and we can't control that
Right.
because we don't have any say.
right, right,
So
right.
no, this is definitely beneficial
Okay.
and I mean, Dollar General is the only reason we got that is because we were able to control. So,
All right, awesome.
and I think the state sees that, which is why they're offering this
Sure.
grant to all the municipalities.
So if there's no discussion, further discussion, there would be, well, actually, it's not an opportunity to discuss, but you know, we'd be looking for a motion to adopt PZC resolution 25R2, a second, and then there's a final opportunity to discuss before the roll call.
I move to adopt PCC resolution number 25R.
A second.
I'm like, wow.
Oh,
I guess that's where it died. There goes that.
Right.
Well, that's fine.
You ready for it?
Roll call, please.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark, Ryan,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
David, Greg,
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Well, that's it in terms of what was on the agenda. I don't know if you guys have a general new business or business,
Mhm.
there's. So, if there's no unfinished business, there's obviously no one here from the public. If nobody else has any final thoughts, you just, call for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Who seconded? All right, Mark did.
Sorry, you caught me in a move.
If they, all in favor, say aye.
Yeah, I was getting there.
All
All in
right.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
7:38. There's nothing I asked.